All right, you're good to go whenever you want to call to order.
Okay, so let's start the meeting now. It's 4:04. And first of all, and maybe Peggy or Denny, I know John, you want to introduce him to the committee. Welcome, John.
Yes, welcome, John. Yes, I know John and his wife, Teresa Corcoran. Personally, met Teresa at the Wildlife Sanctuary, and you may know that Teresa is a doctor at Outer Cape Health. And just this past year, John retired and now is here full-time. And since they have openings on the committee, I had reached out to him and spoke to Bruce about it. And Denny concurred. I'll let Denny talk about how he knows John, but I think John would be a wonderful addition to our committee. And we just thought he might get a sense of what we do by attending one of our meetings.
Well,
Denny,
John,
do you want to?
okay. John and his wife donated a beautiful CR to WCT down the bottom of Bayberry Lane off of Lieutenant Island Road. And so they have protected that area across the street from them into perpetuity, John.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was a long affair. CRs are just horrible in terms of how long it takes to get anything done. There are a lot of steps and all that sort of stuff, but they're just as effective as having a fee property by the Conservation Trust. So, and Teresa and John hung with us during that process, and for which we thank them. So,
Well, we were happy to do it. We didn't want someone to build a house right in front of us. So we wanted to preserve that area, and it would be nice to get some of the more of that land.
yep, it would be.
So anyway.
Thank you very much for that.
Mhm.
That sounds like a wonderful.
And
John,
I know
John?
Teresa,
excuse me.
it's a birdathon. Right, Peggy?
But yes, Teresa's on our birdathon team.
They're birding.
Oh, she's on the team too.
Yes. She's a lame duck.
Yeah. Okay, well, again, welcome. Anybody, I don't see anybody else. Anybody want to make comments?
Just a comment, John, you know that you have to apply through Town Hall. There is the website, committee application and all that jazz.
Yes, I can do all that.
Yep.
Peggy reached out to me and said, why don't you just sit in and see what you think? So
That's a great idea. That's also a great sales pitch at the selectmen meeting.
So everyone be on really good behavior today.
Well, with all the selectmen information, it will be an interesting, well, you get a lot of feeling about what we're about here.
okay.
Okay, first the agenda. Any corrections to the agenda?
I'd like to suggest we add one item.
Yeah,
And that is, Fred has asked that we revisit the guidelines for conserving and preserving land.
yeah.
And so if we could add that. I guess that would be under old business.
Yep. Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Make a move.
Okay, so the agenda is accepted. And we'll add Fred's comments on the guidelines. Okay. The minutes from January 19th. Any comments on the minutes? I just had a couple. The first was, I know there was a question, Peggy, about what got said around the properties on Drummers Cove. But I think that it's just, there was something was missing and it got added. It's, I don't know that we need to include those in the minutes.
Okay. I was too busy writing and not listening.
I had a tiny typo, I think. Under property management,
Okay.
a little more than halfway down where it says AmeriCorps person find boundaries using GPS. I think you should have a 2 in there.
Yes.
That's my contribution.
Mm.
Oh, to find boundaries. Thank you, Lynn.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other corrections or comments? Okay, all in favor of accepting?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Hmm.
Okay, so next is the chairman's report. And I do want to, and I promise not to take more than 5 minutes, but given the Board of Selectmen meeting last week, I did want to do kind of a review of what the committee's about, maybe helpful to John anyway, and to answer some of the questions. The Board of Selectmen did 2 things last week. One is they brought up a discussion of our scope and purview. Now, I'm sorry that we weren't part of that discussion before they did it, but Ryan had some issues. They wonder about what we were doing here, and that was a focus of the discussion. The second was and so I'll talk about that. The second was that they were voting on our properties, both the Indian Neck properties and the 3 properties in the marshes. And for the first time, and the votes, let me just say, the votes go, there are 2 votes they take. The first is, should this be forwarded to town meeting? The second is, do they support it? Almost always. In fact, this is the first time I can think of that hasn't been forwarded. But the Indian Neck properties were not. It was a 3-2 vote, and I know many people in the committee were watching at that meeting. 3-2 vote against even forwarding the article. The Marsh articles, that was 4-1, but there was one person who did not even support sending that to town meeting. So maybe to start with a town discussion, because really what these were all the select people were all the shellfishermen who were voting no. And they had some real concerns, I think, about access. But to start with the discussion, they were saying that they were not sure we had the kind of right to do what we're doing. And so I thought I'd just go over the town. This committee, first of all, started in 1987. So it's been going on for a long time. In December of 98, we were appointed the committee to handle the land bank law. And so you probably were around, Bob, for some of those land bank.
No, actually, I came right after that.
Yeah. But that was a time that was very busy for the committee, and there was a lot of land that went into conservation during that period. In 2005, the land bank program was replaced by the Community Preservation Act, and Bob has been our representative to the CPC. And there have been 2 pieces of property that have been placed in conservation since that time. One was the Pinto property right over by Lynn at Drummers Cove. And the other was the Clover area, and that we were a part of that. Both of those were involved with the Conservation Trust, but the town did put some money into both of those projects. The last project that we tried as a kind of go it alone project was the Link Lot, again, over by Drummers Cove, and that didn't meet a 2/3 majority. So
It
those
got a
are the,
majority,
go
but
ahead,
not
Dave.
a 2/3. It got a
What's that?
majority. It got a majority, but not a
Oh,
2/3.
absolutely, got a majority. And there's baggage that went with that property, so. But I did want to, one of the questions again is whether we can bring these recommendations to the select board. And on the town website, disposition of town-owned land from September of '03, any town committee or board may petition the Board of Selectmen for recommendation of a specific parcel when they have a need for use of such land, excuse me, based on criteria which reflect the committee or board's charge under the town charter or other applicable law. So I think we clearly meet where we were set up to look at open space and conservation lands. And the process of the transfer of the town lands, unlike unlike purchasing the lands, is an easy one. We bring it in, it goes to the committees, et cetera. So I'm not sure what the concern was about. Again, there was no discussion with us beforehand, but I want to say things have reached the point that, there was some question about whether we could even do what we're doing. I think not only do we have the right to do what we're doing, but I suggest that it's our responsibility to transfer lands that we think should be in conservation. Those Indian Neck properties, I think, are beautiful properties. They should not be building a house, a toilet, anything on the property to the west side. But that's clearly not the feeling of the majority of the board. I remember, Fred, the first time we went over there, we said, wouldn't this be wonderful for conservation? But I think the reason for that is access. And Ryan Curley is very involved looking at the Echeverria, is how you say it?
Echeverria.
Echeverria, the landing study that was done, and making sure that whatever landings were there are essentially they're able to access. And the concern is that if we put this in conservation, that they're not going to be able to get access, or that access could be limited. I don't think that's true. I pointed out we have lots of conservation land that they use to access right now. Conservation Trust and some town land, an Old Wharf Road, people know, down the end of Old Briarcliff, is a very, very busy oyster area, and that's in conservation. The land we put in conservation by Pleasant Point is also a town landing, and there were no concerns about that. So I don't think it's an issue, but really they do. And their argument, and I'm saying this because I think we have to make some decisions on these properties. Their argument is that Conscom is involved with the properties. They have jurisdiction of the properties in either case. Okay. And so what are we doing that makes any difference? And I just like, everybody's heard the plugs before, but to think about it. So we're doing three things. One is that we every year inspect the properties. The second is that it takes a 2/3 vote. And that's why I was a little surprised that they didn't send it. All the opposition needs to do is get a 1/3 + 1. And we don't get this into conservation. Once it's in, that turns around. And if someone says, listen, let's transfer it, we want to put a Ferris wheel on Indian Neck or whatever, that takes a 2/3 vote. If we get a 1/3 + 1, it stays in conservation. The last thing is, when it's in conservation, it has to go through the state legislature for a vote. So, I do think that it's worth, particularly marshlands, particularly lands that really are of high value, to get those in conservation. Some of the questions that I was asked around this is, from the committee and other people, is why not more purchases? And I just did want to address it. There may be some out there, but again, the two purchases that have worked have been with the Conservation Trust. And so if there's something that they see that we can partner with them, I think that's great. Going into the Piles property, going into the property over by Hamlin Park, which I think are both wonderful personally, and not everyone thinks that piece over by Hamlin Park by the bridge is so great, but those two properties cost, they've come down, I guess, Piles, but were listed for $800,000 and for something like $1,300,000. I just don't believe that town meeting, we can't get a transfer at the town meeting. It's not going to happen. I think if people in the committee find some alternatives, find something I think would be good, just let me know and we can certainly go forward with it. To be honest, some of the things, I get called sometimes with somebody who wants to donate some money even. The other thing I'd say with putting this property, finding some property we want to buy, is that as simple as the transfer of property is, the purchase of the property is a royal pain in the neck, and there are a lot of difficult procedures. If somebody wants to buy, it's much easier to go through the Conservation Trust, frankly, than it is to go through us. And so when I've gotten a call, I will occasionally say, we have to go to town meeting. We need a 2/3 vote on this. We need, et cetera. So maybe if talk with Denny, and if they're interested, this is the way to go. So I wanted to just clear that up as just sort of I'm winding down the last 6 to 8 months here, and just to take a look at it. You know, with the shellfishing community, you know, we really have to find some ways to work with them. And one of the ways I think is the access. I mean, we can access our CPC funds to help them with it. And I'd be delighted to do it. As people know, the agri-property is an area of Lieutenant Island that we wanted to do. Unfortunately, they have problems with private property prior to that, and it's not worked for us. The biggest problem, in my opinion, that they're going to have with these landings is the private property that gets in the way. And that includes Indian Neck, that includes the other end of Lieutenant Island. There are, you know, those are the issues. And when we can find an owner who's willing to deed us some access, I think that's terrific. But, you know, that's an issue that they have, but that's one way we can do it. The other thing, that we were talking about is that the Healthy Harbor, the management of the harbor draft came out. And, you know, one of the big focuses was on preserving the marshes. And that's something that we and they, having a healthy harbor is something we all should do. And so my hope is that we can also work with them around, listen, this makes sense for everybody to get these, at least these marsh properties, if we can't agree to some of the other conservation land, into care and custody. The only other thing I wanted to bring up at the meeting, and we'll talk about it later, but even with the marsh properties, Ryan Curley had some concerns, and I think they're actually valid concerns, I have to say, about 3188. That's the property at the tip of Cannon Hill that abuts Audubon Conservation Trust land. And he thinks that's a landing. Now, again, as we just said, I don't think that matters in terms of access, but they clearly do. They don't want to, they see that as a loss of control. And so I think we should talk about that as we move down. But anyway, thanks for listening. It was a difficult meeting on Tuesday, and I did want to address some of those issues.
Bruce,
Anything from your perspective, Tom? Sorry.
Bruce, if I could just make one point.
Yeah.
At that meeting, and I reviewed my notes again, were we the straw dog? Are they really taking issue with Conservation Commission?
Oh, sure.
And Conservation Commission is empowered by the state. I mean, that is in the Department of Environmental Protection authorization that each town shall have a Conservation Commission. But
Right.
it seems to me that all of their concerns boil down to, what if CONSCOM changes their mind? What if CONSCOM gets more restrictive? What if CONSCOM? And I think we're just seen as the coyote that's going to transfer those poor refugees into CONSCOM partnership or CONSCOM jurisdiction.
That's totally correct. And I did try to get someone from CONSCOM to come to the meeting, and unfortunately we weren't able to do that. But it is our, bringing the recommendation, as I mentioned before, to town meeting is part of what our purview is. And
no, I think you make a great point with that.
And I would much rather have had someone from CONSCOM answer the questions. But to be honest with you, I don't think it makes any difference. Their argument would be, listen, they have jurisdiction anyway. So if we tried to suppose the road, for instance, I forget what Ryan or Mike brought this up, but suppose the road over by Indian Neck we're being impinged upon by that area that's getting washed out. If the BOS, his picture is if the BOS has control of the property, they have more control essentially. And, you know, the reality of it is that I don't think it's going to, they have to go to the Conscom to make a change in the road one way or the other. So I don't think it makes any difference, but their argument would be, well, if it doesn't make any difference, why are you putting that in conservation? And again, I mentioned that, but it's, you know, it isn't that there's no point to this. I think we just have to pick very carefully. And I think we have. The areas we put into conservation are areas that I think should be in permanent conservation, but there clearly is a difference here. Okay. Anybody else want to?
Well, I would just say, am I on?
Yep.
That I attended, or I tuned into the meeting too, and appreciate your taking the fire, Bruce. But it raises the issue that we want to put these properties into Conscom in the first place. And if you have a board of selectmen who is somewhat hostile to things such as this, they could take a piece of town property and say, all right, we're going to build a, you know, a casino down there or something. And so
Right.
you know, it's not going to happen, but it does bring into question the existence of the committee. And I know we'll talk about this later, and you've already, you know, talked about what we're supposed to be doing, but it's discouraging, I can say that much, to listen to the tenor of the conversation that went on at this meeting.
Right. So let me just say the one other thing that they brought up that I think is important and worth a look at is that other committees in the area aren't making these transfers, aren't requesting these transfers. You know, to that I'd say, and I don't want to, the informal conversations probably shouldn't be talking about, but I certainly know the person who's the head of the Truro Conservation Trust. And my understanding is that Open Space Committee has taken a step back, as has some of the others. What I would say, and a big step, a little step at least, and maybe a big step after the land bank money dried up. But even now, you know, with the CPC money, you know, it's not that frequently that it gets used. The thing I'd say to that is we have 10% of that is ours, you know, by our allotment. And so we want to be involved in that. But the other big thing is, because others, I think we should, I think it's best practices. I think it's a great idea. I'm not knocking it, to talk with the other open space committees and see what's going on. But I would argue that, you know, the fact that we've been active with this is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You know, the fact that other committees have taken a step back, you know, okay, well, that may well be true and we can check it. But I don't think that speaks in a negative way to us, very frankly. You know, the land is expensive and hard to get. And I think this is a way to go. And there are at least 4 other properties that I'm thinking of that I think are worth putting into conservation. So
the other thing that comes to mind here is that that we need strong support from ComsCon. I mean, this is what we're doing. We're putting town land into their custody, and we need them to stand up and say, hey, you know, we support everything you guys are doing, and it's important to attend or at least provide a voice at some of these meetings. So, you know, it's disappointing no one was there. But
yeah.
Anyway.
You know, I share that, and, you know, for a town meeting, given we'll talk about what to do with the remaining article, but I would hope that someone would be there. I think it's difficult for someone like Hillary to, even though I went to Conscom, they voted unanimously to support our articles. You know, if you're in a position where you're making decisions around the land, that's tricky. But certainly somebody from that committee should speak to support what we're doing. I mean, they've consistently been supportive of this, and you know, I can't answer for Conscom. I mean, that's the bind that Peggy was talking about. That Anyway, enough on this, but I did want to, because it was both a surprise and difficult, but I think it kind of makes you think about what you're about, and does this all really make sense? And again, doesn't change. I really do think it makes sense. I don't think they're, but clearly they're not. The other thing it pains me to say, but I do think is worth looking at is the last time we did a survey of the town's attitude towards open space was 2008, I think. Danny, do you remember?
Yeah.
And
Around that time, but I wouldn't go too deep into that survey because I think it was very selective the way it
oh
was.
yeah, I just, I do want, we were talking about the 5-year plan, we'll talk about it a little later, but, certainly one of the things that you have to do is to do another survey. And I think this is a real reasonable time, frankly, to get the town's opinion. If most of the people in town feel like the shellfishermen on the select board, then, we really need to reassess. But it'd be good to get some feedback on that. All right.
Bruce, Lynn had something.
Sorry, Lynn. Somehow I don't know how to get everybody on. So if you just call out. Go ahead, Lynn.
I had a question
Yeah.
about the Cannon Hill Beach property that's in an article going to town meeting.
Right.
I'll discuss the implications of that later in the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. And Jenny, didn't you have something?
Yeah, I'd just say that I think we do need a better rapport with the, well, I say we, I mean you. John, you may not know it, but I'm just an auditor in this function. I'm not a committee member.
Yeah.
But I think that Conscom's got to step up a lot more than what they've done. I've had a couple of conversations since our last meeting, and there was some clarification that came out. Like that, they may make the rules, but they can change the rules too.
Right.
And people can petition for certain things that may not be according to the rules. So that's one. Another item is somehow we need to get this, what's it called? RPAC, Public Access Committee, to get to some conclusions and some strong conclusions as to what that really means.
Right.
I think that public access points are more controlling than Conscom. I think they are deeded. I think they are something that the Conscom cannot override except in their jurisdictional activities. So my take on all this is we needed to be better prepared for that kind of a windstorm that we encountered.
Right.
I think
the only thing in my read on the town landings are, there are a number of the listings of town landings I don't think are real. And so, for instance, the Agri property, that area by the Agri property is listed as a town landing. You can list anything you want as a town landing, but it doesn't make it so. If there is a deeded, if the property has been transferred, and that property, I think, is an excellent example. When we got the lawyer's read on the access to that property, what they were saying is what you have to do, there's a process, just like the process of a road going in, and it has to be registered, there has to be a deed, you have to go, et cetera. I guarantee you, I'd be very, very surprised to see, we know that that's not always the case. It certainly wasn't the case in the one we looked at. So
well,
I hear what you're saying. I think there are lots of them that are out there and to do it, but I think the problem where things are really squishy right now, where they want the control, 188 will come up and is, whether these are.
well, I think with regard to 188, we don't understand all the issues behind 188. And I would not push forward when you don't understand all the issues. I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
Now, with regard to access points, there is some form of deed at Old Wharf Point on the south end, where that is our land, but there is a right of access granted to the town at that point. And so there are some.
I don't question that there are lots of them, Denny, but I'm just saying we have a large list. The Echeverria that list is a big one. And, not all those landings that are listed have gone through the process that the lawyers are talking about.
I haven't seen that study in years, Bruce. Is there a place that it's on the town website?
I can forward it to you. It probably is, but
I'd appreciate
I
it.
think it
Okay.
is on, is that the one that you forwarded this week, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is on the Conscom page of the
Okay.
website.
Oh, okay. That's
Okay.
all I need.
okay. So moving on, property management, anything, Fred?
Nothing this week. No.
Okay, any response from Doug with the, you sent him the findings?
I didn't send it. I was still waiting for your approval on it.
Oh, okay, okay. Trail guides, Lynn?
I've been working with Denny a little bit, getting the latest files to him for looking at and marking up and so on.
Want me to take it from here?
Well, just one thing. I think the two guides that we're short of, I'm hoping that those will be prioritized, Denny.
Okay. No, I got the message, and we will.
It feels like no one's using them at the moment, but for instance, I got a call from the library to drop some off there. They felt that people would be asking for them and they had none left.
Okay.
Yeah.
With
But
regard
what are
to
the two that are in short?
Um,
Lynn, I'm sorry, which are the two in short supply?
Box Turtle and Drummer Cove.
Okay, thanks.
we will prioritize those. I might just say that we have been redoing the trail maps and updating them. We've done them on all of the properties now. And that didn't take any extra time than doing one. We have the files that Lynn gave us. I showed her some of the suggestions that I had for updating the brochures. And we also today pretty much concluded a new map for inside of the folder. Now I'd like to send these to, I don't care, Bruce, you, Lynn, or the whole committee.
And
And
okay.
okay, you want just everybody, or who do you want? Just tell me.
So what are you actually sending?
Well, I will send new maps for all of the
Okay.
parcels and a new inside map for the folder, the sleeve, as you call it, because there are some things on that map and there are some things that were not in the right locations and all that sort of stuff. So we're just trying to make it a little more accurate. And then as I say, we've got all of the trail maps updated. And you'll see that there are a lot of trails that were not on those old maps. You can compare them if you want. But we've gone out and walked them, but I'd be happy for comments. And then some of the stuff that's in the write-ups needs to be updated too, so.
Right. So you're sending the maps for us to review and see,
Yeah.
change if we have any issues, which I doubt. And then those are ready to go. Except that, well, and then you're going to have me mark up your changes for the guides.
I'll do that, Lynn, and I'll send it to you and show you what it is. And then we'll work on the spacing after that.
Okay. All right.
It shouldn't be a big deal, but we'll do whatever you want.
So are some of the changes because of the maps changing or not?
Some of them are minor inaccuracies.
Okay.
You saw them. And I will send them around. I can send them with hand scribbles, or I can get them into word processing, and we'll show you.
Are you talking about the actual guide?
Yeah.
The hand scribbles are fine, if, depending on who ends up updating them, so,
Well, I'm saying I'm willing to do that. If
okay,
you'll let me.
okay.
I'm getting a message here. So,
Well, I'm happy to update them and space them too, so.
okay,
You
well, let's
prefer.
agree on the words first.
Okay,
So I would say send it to everybody, Denny.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'd like to see him.
Yep, and he should. I guess that's really it on trail guides from my side, so.
Thank you for all the work that both of you guys on this.
one thing we'll have to, will be a tiny wrinkle is that some of the guides, not many, but one of them for sure, the columns were readjusted by the printer and they have the
Well,
latest. So we
I
can
think-
deal with that.
My suggestion is that we deal with it, put it into PDF and give it to the printer so that they don't have any degrees of freedom.
No, the place where they adjusted the columns was helpful because I was unable to do it in that.
Well,
So
okay.
it'll work out.
I think you should do it yourself, ourselves.
Well, this was a tricky one. And they did well.
Okay, all right, I'm getting the message.
So the next, and both Peggy, Denny and Bob were involved with discussions with the Audubon about the elementary school. Want to talk about that meeting and where things are now?
Would you like that update now rather than waiting?
Well, we have it under the standing assignments.
Okay,
So
all right.
that's why, if you want to wait,
But-
we can then.
No, that's okay. If it's all right with Bob and Denny, I wrote up a summary of our meeting and I'll extract just the high points in the interest of time. And I do hope they'll jump in if they have anything to add. But at our last meeting, Bob had updated us that he had met with the principal at the elementary school. Since we do not have access to the schools this year, he was trying to find out what opportunities there might be for us to basically get back in there in either virtually or in some fashion in order to make sure that the students there are not losing their connection with our open space here in town. Denny and I volunteered to help Bob in any way that we could. And after that meeting, I came up with the idea of talking with Mass Audubon. I know the education director there, Spring Beckhorn, and she is a very bright, very accomplished and experienced educator and was very cooperative about meeting with us. My thoughts were that Audubon has a very robust program. They are in every school from Provincetown down to Chatham-Harwich. They meet with every class at every grade during the school year. Typically, they're meeting, they're teaching, and it's the Mass Audubon educators are teaching about 4 lessons per grade. Those lessons are aligned with this Massachusetts science standards, and so they are an integral part of the science curriculum. And the teachers are very appreciative of that that cooperation that they get from Mass Audubon. So knowing that we have this resource here in our own community that's already very involved in the classrooms, we thought it might be good to tap into Spring's knowledge and maybe get some ideas about what we can do moving forward. Our immediate goal was to try to find ways to connect with the grades 3 to 5 students and their families at the Wellfleet Elementary School to get them involved in nature this spring in some way that does not require too much effort on the part of either the teachers or the parents, but would get the parents out there with their kids. And then longer term, we wanted to brainstorm ideas for how we might move forward in coming years. We did not get to that point. we ran out of time. But Bob and Spring both gave a nice overview of what their pre-COVID education outreach is, which was very helpful to hear from both sides. We had made Spring aware of what our main objective is, and that is to get kids outside and onto the trails as part of our mission to educate the town, both children and adults, about the value of preserving open space. And it was interesting because Audubon has a parallel goal. I mean, we're all in the conservation business, but theirs is specific to really the work of Mass Audubon. And they certainly want to get kids to increase their ecological literacy, but their overarching theme is to help kids and their family understand the role of Mass Audubon and specifically how the work that Audubon is doing here in the local community. So we both have a very local focus, which I think made us kind of natural partners in this. Before the meeting, we provided some information, materials to Spring to review, and that included the field guide, the activities that goes in with the maps. We had a page that I downloaded from the Wellfleet Conservation Trust website, a observation checklist or observation guide worksheet that students or kids can fill out after visiting a property. And I also provided them a copy of Bob's proposal that he made to the Wellfleet Elementary School about the curricula at the 3 grade levels. So she reviewed those, and based on her review, she gave us I think some nice ideas about specific activities in our trail guides that would be, she thought, of special interest to the teachers and something that the kids would find very engaging. She also recommended some new activities that we currently don't have. She suggested scavenger hunts. Perhaps we could provide simple picture guides. We could do nature journaling activities, which are very appropriate at grade 5 because of the science standards there. And she also had some ideas for Wellfleet Conservation Trust. She was thinking that on their Facebook page, they could request that people post either descriptions of properties they visited or pictures that their kids have drawn based on their visits to properties. And that would get families more engaged in the trails. So she had some great ideas. I think it was a very energizing meeting for me, and I hope for Jenny and Bob as well. What we've decided to do, we're leaving the channels open for future communication. Spring is very open to that. But our next steps would be, and Bob originally planned to do this after talking with the principal, she gave him permission to please go speak with the 3 teachers to assess their interests in doing something this spring and to try to get a better idea of what needs we could help them meet. And I've offered to help Bob in either developing activities, drafting some ideas, or formatting them if that's where the help is needed. And I guess the final thing is that we would need, if we go ahead with our original plan, which was to provide a copy of the trail guides, a complete set to each student in grades 3, 4, and 5, along with activities, we would need to make sure we had sufficient inventory, which I don't know where we are, Lynn. But Bob, if I'm not mistaken, that would be approximately 60 sets.
Something like that.
Yes. About 20 for each grade. Yeah.
Yes.
So
I don't
that
know
would be
what-
something to check on.
When would that be?
Well,
In the spring, after MCAS, right, Bob?
yes.
So we don't have enough at the moment, I don't think. Would be,
Okay.
we'd have to. Yeah.
I think the first thing would be Bob is planning his contact with the teachers and to make sure that they are open to this idea.
I think they'll
And
be
then that
open
would
to
also
this.
give,
I think
I
they'll be
think
open to
so.
the idea because Mary Beth was very enthusiastic about each kid having a trail guide to take home. And she communicated that to them. The question really is, what do they want to do with these? It seems a good time in this particular situation that we're in with the COVID-19 environment to have something for parents to do with their kids outside that's hands-on. So she thought that was good, and one of our goals is to keep the parents aware, get the parents aware of what we're doing. And so the question will be, I think, to the 3 teachers, do you want to just pass them out? Do you want to, which we hope they would want to, suggest an activity they might do. Would you like us to come up with a lesson? Do you want to come up with a lesson? And so I want to get a sense of how much they wish to do, each teacher wishes to do.
Sounds great.
It really does.
Yeah. And, you know, if needed, I can help too.
Yay.
Bob,
Danny?
Bob, I thought you had already given some folders to the school.
Just recently.
I have them to
Oh,
give. I have a number to give, and I haven't counted up how many I have, but I have quite a few of them here.
I gave you some to take to the.
Yes, yes, you did.
Did you have others already as well, Bob?
No, just a very few. I just have mainly what you gave me.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds like a great plan. Anything else, Danny, you have to add? Or?
No.
Okay. To move on, Conservation Trust, I think the exciting thing is Conscom, well, you can talk about that, Danny, but the Herring River Overlook property is getting a trail, and that's some real excitement.
well, we took Conscom out there at the beginning of the month of February, and they went through and accepted our plan that we have. And so we'll start working on that probably next week, putting some benches in and clearing out some trails. So,
Great.
Do we get to help?
sure.
And
But, you know, we've got a few things to do, but it's not a massive project.
so you know, Friends of Herring River are always looking for something.
Oh,
I know
that's
they
true.
are. I know they are. But
That's a good point, Lynn. So if you need, if it's real small, Denny, then if you need any help, I think that's a great idea. Good point, Lynn,
Yeah.
for us to,
and we've got our trustees too. So,
yeah. No, yeah. Okay, anything else you wanted to bring up, Denny, with the Reinhardt property? Or?
No, we're just working on a few ones right now to keep on going. So Reinhardt property for our CR is done. We'll start working on an adjacent property to the Herring River Overlook for CR for Jackie Faust. And a couple of other small little things that people have contacted us about. So.
Okay, Friends of the Herring River, Lynn, anything?
Well, the permitting application, they're still hoping to be on track to put things in by the end of February. One thing of interest is that the upper Herring River culverts, which are really in bad repair, it's not part of the Herring River Restoration Project, so the money has to come from elsewhere. And the town received a grant for this, but it's not enough to get started. So Friends of Herring River have contributed financially to this to enable the engineering and the permitting to begin on those culverts, which is important.
Right.
We're planning the spring calendar. Guided walks will happen outside, maximum of 8, they're thinking, with people like Bob Prescott, John Portnoy, and Barbara Brennesel. And the other thing is the kickoff of the herring count is the equinox, March 20th. And a virtual program is being planned for the kickoff. And I think that's it. There's going to be a virtual 5K race being planned as a fundraiser, and posters and other activities are being planned to keep the project in the public eye during this permitting time. So I think that's it.
Okay. Housing Partnership, John's not here unless anybody has any information to share. CPC, I assume nothing new, Bob?
Nothing new. We have a meeting next Wednesday, I think it is.
NRAB, Tom?
Nothing new other than the final report of the harbor plan is going out. There's also been a lot of emailing back and forth, which the NRAB has not met yet to discuss this, but about ocean acidification. I mean, everyone, or many of you probably saw the article in the Boston Globe that's been sent around to various committees and commented on, but it would be a real threat to the shellfish industry if, you know, if the ocean gets further acidified. It's not a surprise to anybody, but I think this article sort of brought it to attention again, the acidification affecting the calcium content of the shellfish and so forth. So we will be discussing that. There's some studies going on in various agencies about this around the Cape and in Wellfleet in particular. So there should be more on that down the road, I guess.
Okay, for old business, we can start, I guess, with the guidance, the guide for land.
Right.
You want to?
Yeah, I had,
Fred?
yeah, I was, I read the guidelines. I guess you sent them out about the same time as the meeting with the select board recently. And so I guess I was sensitized about wording. And when I read through them, I see that all are statements of positive things we are doing, except you can read item 7 as being somewhat negative in that it says protect from development and for limited and appropriate public access land near oceans, bay, and ponds. So I'm suggesting that since words matter, as we've heard recently a lot, I suggest we delete from development and make it simply protect for a limited and appropriate public access land near ocean, bays, and ponds, which goes along with the harbor plan.
I'd agree with you, Fred.
Yeah.
Can you say that one more time, please?
Delete from development and from that
Okay.
statement 7, which makes it a completely positive statement. Protect for limited and appropriate public access land near oceans, bay, and ponds.
Do we need limited in there?
I think it's a good point, given all that. I mean, it is limited. That is what, you know, in other words, we don't want motor
Well,
vehicles going over the, but
we could eliminate for limited and just make it protect appropriate public access land near ocean, bay, and ponds. It simplifies it.
does that work for you, Fred?
That's even better.
Yeah. Because what appropriate access is okay. Okay, anybody, any other comments on it? Okay.
Do
Should
we
we
need a motion
have
to?
a vote on it all?
I would move that we accept Fred's revision of statement 7 on the plan. As he, to wit,
Yes, could you read that, Tom?
maybe Fred, you could read the correction.
I will, do you mind, Tom, if I make
Why
the
don't you make the
motion?
motion? Yeah.
I move that we alter statement number 7 of the guidelines to read, protect for appropriate public access land near oceans, bay, and ponds.
Second.
Are you keeping the 4 in there?
No, protect
Or
appropriate.
It's
Go from-
appropriate.
protect for appropriate. I think I like that. Okay, there was a second. Do
I,
we-
Yeah, but
Any other
I think
comments?
there's a misunderstanding.
yeah,
I thought it was.
For appropriate public access land near ocean, bay and ponds. Right?
Put the 4 in there.
Yeah,
It does change the message there, but
we're protecting public land near ocean bays for appropriate access.
right.
You can read, you can put the order of the words differently, but protect appropriate public access land near ocean, bay and
Okay.
pond for
Okay.
appropriate access. Does that make better sense?
how about, is it protect appropriate public access to land near ocean, bay and ponds? I understand why Lynn's questioning that, and yeah, it's a little,
Well, it reads better either way, I think, than with the limited. But I,
Wasn't the point, though, that we're protecting the lands, not that we're protecting them for access only?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's why I
Well, I
thought,
mean, it says for appropriate public access land. Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Some,
Is this is not in the agenda, right? I'm not seeing these recorded.
this was an add-on that, Peggy
Oh,
brought up
Okay.
at the beginning.
well, I'm
you
not
wanna
seeing the
postpone it
statements
for-
anywhere. I
it
guess
was
I can find it.
attached. I sent
Yeah.
them out with the minutes the first time last week.
All right.
So, I mean, if
Sorry,
people aren't
sorry.
comfortable, we can postpone this and bring it back for next time.
I think we should just go ahead with it.
Okay.
Uh,
Is everybody,
Let's make sure we get the wording right, though.
read what you have, Peggy.
Well, I have 3 things. We could either go with protect appropriate public access land near ocean, bay and ponds. Protect appropriate access land. Or is it protect lands for appropriate access to ocean, bay and ponds?
Does that mean something different?
I'm looking at previous statements. We're protecting water supplies. We're
Right.
protecting wetlands. We're protecting shellfish habitats. We're protecting links with existing conservation land. We're protecting access.
Right.
We are protecting appropriate public access to land, I think.
I think the emphasis is on land near ocean, bay and ponds.
Yes.
Yes, so is it access to land?
But isn't
Up.
but.
Isn't it that we want to protect the lands
Right.
and where relevant, protect access?
So I think I'm turning right around and saying Fred's original statement.
Well, I think the way Peggy said it the first time, just to protect land, second time, the protect land for appropriate public access near, no, that doesn't work.
No, because that's what you're thinking
Let's
of.
go with Fred's.
Yeah,
Protect appropriate,
Protect for appropriate
Public access.
public, okay.
protect appropriate public access, land near ocean, bay and ponds,
Period.
period.
Public access, comma.
Well, are we defining the land
Can
as
you
public
say-
access land?
I think
That's how it reads now.
it's not being restricted to that, is it?
No, that's.
Protect
Well,
for appropriate public access, comma, land near ocean, bay, and ponds. No?
We're protecting the land for public access. And
Yeah, so I think 4 stays in there.
Right.
But then it's, the emphasis is
Yeah.
on
yes, yes,
public
yes.
access.
The
as a-
reason we want to protect it is for appropriate public access.
I don't think that's the reason.
No, it's to protect the land near the water, to not the bay and all the other issues.
Well, we already
Well, you
have,
can-
like, item 2 is protect regional water supply. Item 3 is protect wetlands and bordering areas. I think that is addressed in
Let me
the
just,
earlier point.
let me
I think
suggest
here
another
the
wording.
emphasis is on okay,
If you wrote protect land near ocean, bay, and ponds for appropriate public access.
That seems like that's your goal, the access.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, that puts the land first. So we're saying protect land near ocean, bay, and ponds for appropriate public access. So we're protecting the land
no.
for appropriate access.
Can you say and appropriate public access
Okay.
at the
I'm
end?
gonna, if that doesn't work.
I think we're protecting access.
I don't think so.
I think that was Fred's initial point, that we're protecting the land in earlier statements. That's covered in,
Right.
so it seems to me here, the point is that we are protecting the access to that land,
You think
the land we've already protected.
Right. If we're really not coming up, I think Tom's,
Yeah.
well, you could vote. But if we're having a tough time, I think for people to work on it and then let's come back and do it. I think your point's well
Okay.
taken, Fred. I like taking out the protect from development. I think that is negative. But
I think
if we're none of us are coming up with wording that we can all agree with, why don't we work on it and bring it back for a vote for the next meeting? People comfortable with that?
Yes,
Because we're spending a lot of time, and we actually do have to make some decisions.
we want a 2 or
So will
4
we make a motion to
with
table
or without
this
or
until
what?
next?
Motion to table.
Okay,
Ay, ay, ay. Hmm.
Second,
Second.
I
all in
second.
favor?
I,
Any no's? Okay. The only other old business I wanted to bring up is that for the 5-year plan, we're looking for grant money to get a person to help us. Unfortunately, there's always some work involved. And to go to the state site doesn't give you any information. However, if you go to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, there are some grants for small towns to do 5-year plans, either continuations or the 5-year plans. So it's something to think about. I think that the big problem for us, as I see it, is that there's May 1st deadline for this year, which I think cuts it pretty close. But I think they're also,
May
Denny said they're,
21st.
what's that?
May 7th. May
Oh, May
7th.
7th? I thought it was May 21st.
Oh, May 24th, but in May.
Or maybe, but to do that application, you need to get a quote from a consultant, and we don't seem to have found a source of consultants.
Yeah. Denny, you still on?
Yes. You're mute, Denny.
Not anymore.
Okay.
I still have one more place that I want to look for consultants. And it's with the Land Trust Alliance, which is a national deal. I just read about them having a list of contractors available. So I'll research that, but I struck out around here. The only other thing would maybe be to go to the Cape Cod Commission and see if they have any information.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, we can certainly try it. And the other thing I was thinking about, we have 1,500 that we're not using now for you know, the problem is if we need an appraisal, that isn't even going to cover it. So you have a, on the other hand, we haven't been looking at buying any properties. It's certainly to use that, and you can overlap 2 years. But I was wondering whether it would be appropriate, if you know, Bob, with the CPC funding, is this something that they would help us fund?
I think they probably would.
'Cause
I
it's-
can't really say, but it seems that they're eager to do something with
Yeah.
open space, because that is one of the 3 areas. And nothing has,
We're too
happened.
late for this year, but it is something we could do for next year.
right, I think so. I'll check it out.
Okay, and then in the meantime, if you find somebody, or I'll call the Cape Cod Commission and see whether they have any ideas, if we can find somebody to work with us, because that's the, obviously, the goal of it all, however we're getting the money.
And I think you have to have a quote from the consultant.
Yeah.
To put in the application.
Right.
And in looking at the application, I see for revising or submitting a new SORP, you have to apply for, or be going to apply for a grant through LAND, which I forget what that stands for. That stands for Land Acquisition for Natural Diversity, or PARC, which is Parkland Acquisition and Renovations for Communities, or DWSP, which is Drinking Water Supply Protection. So I gather that in completing this an application to hire a grant writer person, we'd have to indicate which of those grant programs we're going to apply for.
You would probably be under LAND, which is what we've been under many of them. The only other comment I'd have is, I don't think your committee can apply for that grant. I think it has to come from the select board as the executive branch of the local government.
Right, we need approval both from the select board and from the, yeah, good point, Denny. But I think if we were to go to the select board and say we wanted to do a 5-year plan, and this is an opportunity to look at open space in town and look at the issue, I would hope that they would.
I would hope so too. I would hope so too, Bruce, but I wouldn't go before you're ready.
Right. No, I hear you. Okay, so the last thing I did again want to talk about is the parcels. Again, Indian Neck is not going to town meeting, so it's not even that we get to present that. And I wrote down question petition. That's not, again, the transfer of town property is pretty clearly set out. I'm not sure that they read it, frankly, but it is pretty clearly set out. And so we can't petition for the transfer. That has to go through them, et cetera. You know, we could put something in that asks the town to vote some support for open space in some ways. I actually don't support that either. It had been mentioned, so I included that here. But I think there are better ways to do that.
I think it'd be good to get your poop in a group, as they say, and then maybe do it again next year. Because that certainly is nice land, and if you get the Conservation Commission to make some statements along the way,
Right.
how they'd work with people and all that sort of stuff, you might find it a lot easier.
Right.
than
Yeah,
on
and
working on something else too.
I would hope, at least if we're working together with the shellfishing community, that we at least get some, and again, that means 3 of the select board members, that we at least get a feel as to whether this is something that you know, is going to be possible when we.
I think they're laboring under false information. I think you have to educate them as to what Conscom can and will do.
Right.
Before you'll even get to first base. So.
Right. No, I really hear you, Denny, and I agree. That's what Peggy was saying earlier. I absolutely hear it. And, you know, unfortunately, We didn't get takers. They were invited. And, just because I was concerned when they're questioning our, scope and purview that happened. The other article though, 3188, I'm convinced after walking over there with Lynn, John Reel is convinced that this is the Cannon Hill beach area. And I wrote to Nancy Dale to get her opinions, and says she has no other opinions of it. But the information we have, even in why am I blocking? The access town landing information is that this was sold to the town for $1 back in 1939. The Cannon Hill property itself was probably late 1800s, a long time back. And certainly there's good reason to think that this is the access point. And looking around that area, I don't see any other area that fits it. And this one does, and at first I thought this is ridiculous, going from the start at the beach and go to the marsh, and when you kind of go, what? With some of the description of some of these properties are impossible. But when you look at the area, it actually is, I think, the only one that meets that criteria. So the bottom line with this is, if we leave it in there, then the town meeting becomes an issue around, even though, just to say what Denny's saying, what I've been saying, I think you don't lose any access by putting this in conservation. That's not the perception of the Board of Selectmen. I think we're unlikely to get a positive vote. Again, what they've done is voted to allow us to bring it to town meeting. They have not taken a vote on whether to support the article or not. So I would like to amend the article and remove this property and go forward with the other two conservation properties.
Yes.
I can't, if we're at the point where they can't support the preservation of marshland, non-accessible marshland in the community, we've got a real problem. But I think it changes the discussion at town meeting. And if this goes in with 188, it's going to be a discussion about access. That's all it's going to be. So I'd like to pull that and maintain the other two. So we have a presence, we're presenting some marsh property in the aftermath of the Wellfleet and Harbor Management plan, and go forward. Any comments on that, Danny?
Bruce, I'd suggest that you cast it in light of, you don't have complete enough information on the history of title.
Yeah.
And so therefore you don't want to do that.
Sure.
I wouldn't do it cast on access or anything else.
Right. No, I hear you. Right.
So I guess I'm trying to understand, the access is a little path off a road, a dirt road, to walk onto the property. Are we talking about that, or the fact that you might be able to canoe up to the beach?
I think the biggest thing is the land access. The thing that Ryan Curley is concerned about is the land access. That's what they're concerned about.
And that's over the paper road that goes down to that property.
Right.
Which may not be the trail, as you've learned.
There's a description of it that says it's off First Street, off Cannon Hill, end of First Street. I think I walked there too, Denny, with me.
Once upon a time.
Long time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Is First Street a real street? Or is it a paper road?
It's got a street name up.
I'm looking at the map now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a paper. If you look at the town map, it shows you where the dirt roads are. And if I'm remembering, the road that comes straight down, which I assume is First, actually there's a break, so that road is a paper road. But the bottom line is, I do think there's questions, as Denny said, about, title, about other things. There are reasons, a number of reasons to pull it. But I do think it makes sense to pull it, and not, if we can find the other information and work with them around issues of access, work with, that is the Board of Selectmen and the shell fishermen in particular, then may be something we could go forward with later. But I have some real concerns that at the town meeting, what it's going to be is a discussion on access, and that in general, we're interfering with their access. Again, we don't feel that, but that's clearly their perception.
So am I wrong in, if something's been a public access for a long time, that it stays that way after 20 years or something?
That has to go to land court. Again, I'm happy to send out the information on the Agar property, but the lawyers' notes are very interesting.
Depends on how the property's registered.
Exactly.
So that's the issue.
And in that case, it wasn't. The land was given to the town, and the town just did not register the property. And so that the legal opinion was, you don't, even though it's been accessed forever, for 50 years. So what the town would have to do, the town could say that, go for eminent domain and say, this is, we've used it forever, but it still has to go to land court. It has to be approved, is my understanding from reading the lawyer's notes.
Bruce, I think you're talking about Agar.
Yeah.
And I think Lynn and I are thinking about First Street.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Well,
Yeah.
my question
Same thing though.
No,
is
No?
Ryan's
I don't know.
concern, is Ryan's concern how to get access to lot 188? Or is Ryan's concern, if we put 188 in conservation, the shell fishermen cannot go through 188 to access the shellfish flats?
The
I mean, is
concern,
the access to 188 or through 188?
the access to 188, and the concern is, as I hear it, is that not that they couldn't do it, they can, and the colonial laws say they can go out there, etc. But their belief is they're going to lose some control over this if it goes into conservation. That will be the discussion, I guarantee you, at town meeting. And is that a discussion?
But that's
At this point, at some point, we may want to do it, but I would just suggest, having been at that Tuesday meeting, and those of you who saw it, that
Yeah. No, my only question, Bruce, is are they questioning access to 188 or through 188?
well,
And they're only, I think the concern is through 188 if it goes into conservation, that then they wouldn't be able to walk through there.
Only 188 is the only property there, so it's 2. There's no place to park or anything else. What are you saying, Denny?
I think Peggy's got the right take on it. That the shellfish community is concerned about going through 188, not necessarily to it.
correct.
You can get to 188 by going through a paper road, but and so that's not a new and different issue. I think it's through
To where though?
to
To
the
the
flats.
shellfish flats.
Not that there are any shellfish or many shellfish out there that those guys would be chasing,
No.
but I think it's just the principle, and then you get into specifics.
Okay.
Any other comments or thoughts on this?
Should we make a motion then that we will proceed with the other parcels?
That we would amend the article to remove 3188 and proceed to recommend the other 2 articles, 3186, and I think it's 42.
To something.
It's already down there. Maintain the other 2 if somebody has it right in front of them.
You've got
Um,
plenty of
Map
time to
30,
do that.
186 and map 42, 137.
Right.
Yep.
And that we move forward with our recommendation that those be transferred to Conscom care and custody.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Okay, unanimous, 6-0. Okay, well, that's not bad. We finished. That's all I had. Does anybody else have anything else that would?
I'll bring something up. I don't know if you guys are aware, did I send you a copy of Doug Gwaley's application to AmeriCorps to have a work day on Pilgrim Springs?
No,
He just got back to me today. I'll send it to you. But it's without a date, and it's just for work scope on Pilgrim Springs. Just so you know. That was the one that I had mentioned before. It's now with Doug.
So he's going to give a date when people could help.
He's going to give a date that, well, he's trying to get a date from AmeriCorps.
Okay.
And if you want to help, then you can meet that date. Sorry about the phone.
anything else? We had a lot on the agenda. I think we finished
Yeah.
in hour and a half. What'd you think, John?
Thought this was really interesting. I also think I have a whole lot to learn, so that'll be good.
Part of the fun.
Yep.
I have a whole lot to learn. And
Uh,
it's good we have Betty here, sort of, who's been around forever, helping, giving us some picture of, the picture of things that, long picture of things.
Uh-huh. Well, thank you all very
And I'll
much.
send out, just in case people don't have it, those guidelines for conserving and preserving land, so you can check the wording on all of those items for discussion next month. Yes, John, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you,
Oh,
Jeff.
thank you.
Appreciate
John.
your interest.
Okay.
The only other thing I'd mention is in March, I'm going to be in Florida. Is it possible you could run the meeting in March, Tom?
What would what's the date of the meeting?
Be there?
I will not be here that day either.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Set the meeting for a different day.
Yes.
I mean, it'd be good with all that's going on to meet, but we aren't going to be around until April. The town meeting has been postponed to June, so we have some
Oh.
time to work on that, but. Is there
And when
anybody
do the
else who'd be
warrants have to
willing-
be in, though?
What's that?
When do the warrants have to be in?
Oh, well, I will send the change in the warrant, I will send tomorrow. It's already in, so this is an amendment, and, you know, some of the other amendments that they had last year, they were changing and rechanging for months, so I would hope they're not gonna make any resistance to that. I don't think there will be, actually. I think it's gonna be pretty straightforward.
I
So
don't
the-
think they've set a date for the printer yet, so.
the date of the meeting would be March 16th, is that correct?
Yeah, the third
Yes.
Tuesday.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we're going to actually, we will have had our shots by then, and we're going out to LA for a couple of weeks, so we're leaving on the 16th. So maybe we could do it. I don't know whether the week before is too early or waiting until April. Or maybe someone else would like to give it a shot.
Any thoughts?
Well, you're gonna be gone and Bruce is gonna be gone. We may not have a quorum.
Yeah, do we-
Yeah, cuts it close. You know, there's a lot going on. I hate to do it, but I think I may be even able to come on to the meeting, but I'm very hesitant down there without the paperwork and everything to put together the meeting. I just don't think it's going to work.
Well, if we do a very abridged agenda, I could I could attempt to lead the meeting if we would have a quorum. We would need how
Right.
many for a quorum?
4.
4?
Yeah.
So if we were, let's mark down March 16th then.
And I'm, like I say, I may be able to come to that as long as I can get my Zoom working on that and I put it on. I'll have a chance at another meeting I'm going to, but if I can get it on my iPad, which I think I can, I would certainly be at the meeting, but if you would run it and sort of organize it, Peggy, that would be great.
And you could perhaps just join by phone if getting visual access. So we'd
Right.
at least have a quorum if you could attend.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll talk.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So
I
moved.
move that we adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Any negatives?
Those opposed?
Hey, we finished by 5:30. That's pretty good with all we had to play here. Okay.
Okay, Bruce, thank you.
Yeah, see you later.
Yeah.
Okay,
a lot.
bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.